Hello and welcome to the Genre Fiction Podcast. I am Jack Roney with one of my usual partners in crime, Harry Colfer. This is episode 2 of our conversation with romance author Ali Blake. So welcome back, Ali. Thanks again for giving us your time to speak with Harry and I.
Pleasure.
I have to make a point, seeing as we're talking romance, and in the last episode you did mention about rom-coms, and currently, Jack, where exactly are you?
I am up in Airlie Beach, North Queensland. I'm up here.
And one of the most popular movies currently on Netflix is a movie called Love is in the Air, which was filmed
the Delta Goodrem one.
Delta Goodrem one, yes. It's I wouldn't how should we put it, crow about it with respect to acting talent and storyline. However, it's filmed in Airlie Beach and Whitsundays, and there's a brilliant shot of going into Airlie Beach, and so you can see all of the sort of everything was filmed in Airlie Beach or in Whitsunday Islands.
Been a very popular place. There was also another Australian crime drama called Black Snow was filmed up in this area around. It was kind of more sort of rural noir crime around the tropical cane fields and the backdrop of it was filmed around Proserpine. It was a fictional town, but it had that sort of real tropical sort of country feel to it. So yeah, it's become a real destination for film production.
A lot of the filming was done at Chute Harbour airstrip that's there, and they made it into a different sort of can't remember what name they gave the airport, but that's where it was with Chute Harbour. But anyway,
well, there you go. Yeah, well, I'm just up here visiting family up in Airlie Beach at the moment. So the magic of Zoom, we can, as we know, Harry, the last couple of episodes you recorded from the deck of a boat.
Yes.
So we can come to you from anywhere. Okay. So this episode is our episode 2 of our conversation with Ali Blake. And last episode we spoke sort of more generally and broadly about the genre of romance and the subgenres, and again, the learning for me, the difference between a love story versus a romance, and sort of the structure around the two different sort of genres of that sort of writing. What we're going to talk about now is, you touched on this earlier, Ali, that your writing has allowed you to embark on other creative pursuits and specifically teaching other writers how to write. Now, just as a bit of a backstory, we first met when I was attending the Queensland Writers Centre printable workshop, and you were one of the presenters at that workshop where you were presenting and assisting writers in terms of how to market and build their author profiles, and that was before I'd first published my book. And I remember I was lucky to have a sort of a very brief one-on-one mentoring session with you about the idea of building author profiles and writing under a pen name, and I'll never forget that advice you gave me. So that was kind of how we first intersected. And I've been sort of watching your career ever since. And you I know you've been embarking on a lot of speaking events and a whole range of workshops, and in particular moving into your How to Write Love online writing course, which we really want to start delving into how that came about and the components of it, and really start digging into the advice for writers who are looking at romance. So, for example, I write crime fiction. I'm comfortable writing, police procedurals and high tension. Maybe there's some graphic descriptions of crime scenes and murder, and I'm comfortable with that. But try and get me to write, and I've deliberately steered right away from any elements of romance in my stories. There's probably opportunities to do that, and I know a lot of and again, my point being is that writing romance, it doesn't necessarily have to be a romance book. There could be elements of romance that cross over into
100%.
other genres. So what we're going to talk about now is, say, for someone like myself, who I might be thinking, okay, my niche area is writing, because of my police background, writing crime, police procedurals and detective stories is where I want to go. But I really like to broaden my writing skills and actually start to embark on, well, how do I introduce some elements of romance into my stories, because that will add drama and make it a more powerful story. So I guess what we're talking about now is not so much you can use it whether you want to draw elements of romance writing into your other genres for crossover, or whether you are in fact writing a romance story. So my first question, now that I've got through all that, my first question is,
I think that's all we've got time for now.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for having us. Your How to Write Love online writing course. Can you tell us how that project started?
So it's happened very, very quickly in the most wonderful way that I was sitting in a hotel room at a Romance Writers of Australia conference with a couple of other authors, and it was sort of during the whole COVID open closed, experience, and we were in Queensland, so we were very lucky to be able to attend some events that others couldn't, and so we had time on our hands to sort of just get talking about it, and we hadn't seen each other for quite a long time, so we were like full of beans, like what can we do, what's everybody doing? And one particular author, Jennifer St. George, who I've known for a number of years, who's written romance novels, but she also comes from this phenomenal marketing background. She launched Guinness in Russia when she was like 21. She's got this fascinating story. She was speaking at Bond at the time, and speaking on writing genre at Bond. She was teaching, and had sort of said, there's opportunities. I'm sure there's opportunities to have an online writing course for romance. That she said she's seen lots of other writing courses come online, but had never seen one about romance that felt like it was really as good as it could be. And me, being a hustler that I am, just kind of perked up and went, that sounds fun. Can't say no to anything. I might have zero time in the world, will still go, please, please, please let me join. And so she sort of pegged that and went, ha, 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 radar. The next time we met at the Romance Writers of Australia conference the next year, when the world opened up, she'd put together a couple of other people that she'd been thinking of. And we were all people who knew each other. So Amy Andrews and Claire Connolly, who are two other Australian romance authors, we all sat down for a glass of bubbly and said, how about we do this thing? And we kind of just literally from this meeting 1 August, by about 3 months after that, had written all the modules. We kind of figured out who was going to write different modules, who was going to speak on which subject matter. The fact that there was 4 of us meant that we had different skill sets, meant that we had different places that we'd come from, things that we were more comfortable talking about, that just worked out beautifully. We wrote these modules. We hired a cameraman to come and meet us and film for a day. He looked at us and said, there's no way you're going to film that much in one day. And we just said, watch us. And we managed to do the whole thing with basically in one take. It was just kind of all these, we're all kind of just doers. We're all people who, when we want to get something done, we make it happen. And then we created, through Teachable program, we ended up launching it on Teachable. So we edited the videos, I created workbooks, because having the sort of branding and graphic side of things is sort of one of my skill sets. And then we launched this thing into the world, knowing that any new course tends to have a very small uptake when it first goes out into the world. And we knew we kind of wanted maybe sort of a certain number of people in the course, because we had an online Facebook group that we wanted to have a bit of like, that we could join and talk to people and use it as a place for the people to feel like a collegiate experience, that when they did this 14-week course that was 10 weeks of modules and an extra few weeks at the end to kind of catch up, that they could do a module once a week and feel like they were going to sit down to school, and then they could talk about it, they could ask us questions. So all of this, we had this thing set up going, we don't know if this is the right way to do it, but this just feels like the right way to us. And we basically sold out within about 2 days. And so we kind of thought, okay, we knew this was something of value. We knew that between us, so between Jennifer St. George, Claire Connolly, Amy Andrews and I, we've sold over 200 books. We have over 10 million copies of our books sold worldwide. We've had different publishers. Claire Connolly first started out as a self-published author, and now self-publishes as well as writing for Harlequin Mills and Boon. And within her first year, she was an Amazon All-Star, which meant she was one of the top 10 authors selling at Amazon in the UK at the time. So we have lots of different experience from lots of different places, and we knew it was something of value, but to see the fact that it's been out in the world now, we're on our 3rd course, so we do 4 courses a year so that we can actually be involved with the program. To see people coming out and saying how much it's inspired them and how much the way we've worded things has helped them make sense of concepts that they've heard of before but never quite were able to get a handle on, has been really rewarding. So it's kind of this thing that we just went, let's do this thing, and it's been an amazing experience. Like for you guys, having something that you guys can do together as little cave-dwelling authors, to be able to sit down with other writers and have a project together like this. But isn't that like a unique, like a lovely thing to be able to do, to kind of go, let's just have a crack at something, and it means we get to spend time talking about writing with with each other. So for something that's really probably very rewarding for you guys on your own, to be able to put something of value out is really lovely as well. So yeah, that's how it all came about.
And that's how, how the three of us, myself, Harry and Bryn, came to talk about putting this podcast together was, how can we do something on top of, there's a lot of social networks there where authors come together and have coffee, and it's a social thing. But we wanted to do something that was more than just a bunch of authors coming together for a monthly coffee. We wanted to actually come together, and we don't profess to be experts, but we felt we had some information that we could share about our journeys and experiences, and just kind of chew the fat on different writing relating topics, and add to what we're doing as writers, and have some sort of other creative pursuit. Would you agree, Harry? That was kind of
I mean, that was the idea. I mean, it was simply to be, I mean, it came from us two talking with respect to, me jumping on, trying to add on to your sort of tutorials and stuff that you were doing with your crime writing and things. And the fact is that you had too much to talk about in your 2 hours or that you gave. And then the idea of doing it as a podcast where we could actually just sort of come up with subjects to talk about. And Bryn joined up. Unfortunately, as we have to point out, we haven't got Bryn today. He's unable to join us, but hopefully next slot he'll be back. That was it. The idea was just to be able to talk to people about writing and get that sort of information that we've managed over the years to come up with. Not that we're sort of million book sales and stuff it's like that, but at least we've got some sort of knowledge over the combined years that we've been writing. And
you do, but do you find that, like, I find too that the more that I talk about writing, the more that I learn about it as well. When I speak about things, when I write about it, when I talk to people about it, I find myself going, I've forgotten that, or I didn't realize that that's what I was doing until I just voiced it. So for all that it's something we put together to be able to help other people, it's just been really, really valuable that anytime I pop into a group to see how, to answer questions or talk to people who are doing the course, I find that it just absolutely informs what I'm doing and makes me kind of step up my game as well. So just for us to kind of talk about our craft and talk about writing, there's no end to it. I think I could do that for the rest of time and never feel like I've heard everything. So I'm sure you guys have found the same thing.
One of the huge advantages of doing that is presumably you're not marking anything. So you can actually teach without the downside of having to mark assignments.
100%. And there's something to that as well, that there's brilliant opportunities for writers to get manuscript assessments and appraisals and things as well. And so those opportunities are open for people. But for what we were offering, it was a case of this is the best way that we could offer it and be able to be time-wise as well and be efficient with it as well, so that as many people could get access to it. And while we're all still have our own careers to manage as well at the same time. So it's been this amazing kind of gargantuan thing that somehow we managed to pull off, and we're really, really proud of.
What's the format?
How many slots do you have? How many students do you have in that each year?
Around about 25 or so, because we need to, it's having that kind of intimacy as well. Yeah. So that the group, like the group that we have running at the moment, is just phenomenally chatty and verbose, and they get to know each other. Then they get to then kind of support one another, and after the first group finished and we had a Romance Writers of Australia catch up, a few of them were there and able to kind of catch up with us and one another, and it becomes like they've always had that. This is an experience they've had together. So yeah, having it that way has worked out just.
Sounds like you're starting to really not only are you combining your combined knowledge with your other co-facilitators and sharing that experience, but you're also building a community of writers as well, that, as you say, these people are starting to communicate with each other, and so you are connecting romance writers to other romance writers.
Yeah, which as you know, it's like that thing of we're so solitary in what we do. And the times that you are able to get together with other writers, you kind of leave like floating off the ground a bit, because you've been with your people who understand the crazy voices in your head. And so to be able to spend time with people who get it and love it the way you do really helps to kind of add that kind of spark to the work that you're doing as well. So I think everything about it has just been this beautiful, holistic, uplifting kind of thing. It's amazing. And we've it's one of these things that started out as this one idea, and then we've we're going to just keep going. We're currently working on a self-publishing course that we've written, that we have filmed and is currently being edited, and the workbooks are being created. Because as I mentioned, Claire Connolly having this amazing experience of being an absolute blockbuster seller, self-publishing. So when she then sold to Harlequin, and she writes a number of books a year for them, she's still self-published as well, because they're both like these very different kind of readers and different kind of income streams as well. And so for me, having my experience with author branding, and as you know, with the Queensland Writers Centre, as Jack had mentioned, so I can bring that, even though I haven't self-published, I can bring all of the sort of social media and branding side of my experiences into it as well. So, and then you've got Jennifer, who I mentioned is come from this amazing marketing background. So all of us are able to kind of bring different pieces of what we know into a course that we'll be launching hopefully later this year.
And sorry, Jack, will you go on?
Thank you. Sorry. Ali, can you just explain a little bit the specific structure of your course? Do people enroll for a particular term or semester, and everyone is traveling at the same pace, or is it self-paced and you can enroll at any time? Is it a combination of online tutorials and face-to-face? Just the specific structure of what you offer.
Sure. The way that it works is at the moment, the way we've got it working, and it's working really well, so I'd say it'll stay this way, is we have like it's basically like 4 times a year it drops. And so when it drops, every Monday a new module will open. So it's that thing of like everyone can sit down on Monday and watch the videos. And then they have a workbook that they can download that they can either take notes or use to then take it. It gives them, for example, if it's a module on characterization, it will have, you know, pages and pages of ideas where they can interview their characters, or how they can look more deeply into character types, and lots and lots of information about writing of characters. So a lot of the stuff in there isn't necessarily just about romance as well. So it's definitely a romance writing course, but there's, you know, 99% of it are things that you can absolutely, when you're talking about story structure and characterization and setting and dialogue and point of view, and all of those things are absolutely applicable across the board. So you get a new module drops every Monday for 10 weeks. And the modules we cover are what is a romance novel, because understanding the genre is very, very important to make sure that you're on the right track if you're keen to write romance. Creating compelling characters, we have structure, we have great beginnings, settings and world building, we have dialogue and point of view, the art of the sex scene, and then 7 weeks of craft. And then we have 3 weeks at the end, which are preparing for traditional submission, an introduction to self-publishing, and then a module about productivity as well. And we found that, and Jennifer had done a lot of research at the beginning as to people who actually finish a course, because the course finishes after 14 weeks and that's it. So it's very much encouraged that you guys turn up, you do the work, and you do the course in the time that it occurs, because courses that tend to be open-ended, like there's this many people who actually finish them. It's a very small percentage of people who ever finish a self-directed course. So the fact that we have one that is encouraged for there to be the group involvement, there's a, you know, as I mentioned, the private Facebook group. So having that to encourage people and to remind them each week, this is what's happening this week, this is what's happening this week, how are you guys going, helps keep people on track. And yeah, the number of people who actually are going along with it and finishing the course is phenomenal. But what that also does is, for anyone who's keen to be a writer, most of us come from a place where we're busy in our lives. We either have, you know, we're working full time, or we have, you know, 3 kids that we're looking after, or, you know, there's the time that you're actually putting towards your writing is minimal, or to kind of promise yourself you're going to carve out the time and follow through is a real down for new writers. So what this course also does is to say to people, this is what you have to do. If you want to become a writer and you want to make a career of this, or you want to finish a book, you have to actually give it the respect it needs, and find that 3 hours a week, find that half an hour a day, whatever it is that works for you, to make those habits where you're actually sitting down every week to spend time writing. So the fact that we make it quite, come on, everyone has to keep up, is hopefully going to help people create those habits that when they finish the course, they can still say, you know, Mondays from 7 till 9, and, you know, Wednesdays from 3 till 5, that's my time, I'm just going to keep going with it as well. So there's lots of reasons why we chose to structure it the way we did. And most of it was just about, we want the people doing the course to get the most value out of it that they can while they're doing the course, and then on into the future as well.
I think yeah, one of the things that I advise people is that it's one of my quotes is that if set your goal low for your word count, 100 words a day, and it'll take you 2-3 years to create your novel. But if you don't do anything, it's going to take a lifetime.
Yeah, 100%. And it's those every 100 words is 100 words. Like they're all successes, they're all wins, all those bites of time that you can take on a win. So I don't know if you guys have ever done NaNoWriMo before, National Novel Writing Month.
I can't with my roster pattern assigning myself a month in the year to actually sort of like dedicate to writing. Forget it. It's not going to happen.
I totally get that, and I'm someone
I would love to be able to, but no.
Yeah, I can write a lot quite quickly, or I can write quite a lot in a block of time. But as I mentioned earlier, I have like a laziness factor to me as well. So I don't, for me to sit down, and for me, the whole NaNoWriMo structure, which for those of you who haven't done it before, National Novel Writing Month started out as a way for people to spend November to try to write a 50,000 word
50,000 words, yep.
And so I would get 2 or 3 days in and not be keeping up, and then kind of go, and I'd give up. So the reward wasn't there for me, but there is something to the fact that if you are taking those wins, those 100 words a day, that's valuable. You don't have to be writing 1,667 words a day. And so kind of an adjunct to the How to Write Love course is we're doing a NaNoWriMo boot camp in November. And so anyone can join. It's called the How to Write Academy Nano Boot Camp. I think if you look it up on Facebook, and it's anyone can join. And we're complete rebels. Like, there are no rules as to how many words you have to write every day. It's about having a space where you can come in to kind of clock in, read an inspirational quote. We're going to have writing sprints happening all day long. So anyone who wants to come and join at any time of the day or night that suits them will have someone to sit there and go, okay, you've done half an hour. Can you do 15 minutes more? Well, you've done 100 words. How about you just do another 50 and then you can clock off. Yeah. So creating those kind of habits and not having that kind of pressure of having to write a certain amount. And it's that thing of every single word that you've written is a word that you wouldn't have written if you didn't sit down to do it.
And the other thing is that every single word you've got allows you to edit it. Whereas if you haven't written it, you can't edit it.
100%. And I think that's one of those things. It's like, it's not about, there's a couple of different authors have taken claim to this quote, but it's like, you can fix a bad page, you can't fix a blank page.
Yeah.
And which is so true. So another great thing about that kind of fast writing, sprint writing, or sort of the National Novel Writing Month is don't try to be perfect. Just try to get as many words down as you can. You can always fix it later. So we talk about that in the productivity module. We talk about lots of different ways that you can different kinds of writers, because some writers that just makes them twitch at the idea of not having something perfect. Whereas you and I clearly, we write, we don't write, we don't plot and all those kind of things. So
I mean, I'll have to say that I did do a bit of plotting. I do a bit of plotting, and I do some, retrospective plotting, is that I'll just write a load of stuff and then go, oh yeah, that works, but that doesn't work, and I'm gonna have to fix that. And
this for me is someone who, and I actually took on the structure module. So the structure, which is all about structure and all about story beats. And I wasn't in the Zoom conversation where they actually allocated who was doing what. So I got lumped with the structure. And I'm like, okay, this is me who doesn't plot and writes all out of order. But it was this brilliant thing of, I've done enough. I've read Save the Cat. I've had to plot out things for a couple of projects that I've done. Coming from someone who isn't a natural plotter, to then be able to explain to people, okay, this is how you can go about it, I think is really helpful, because it means that those who find it terrifying or think, no, I don't want to know about it, I can say, well, I'm an example of someone who didn't want to know about it and then had to come at it in a way that makes sense to me. So I've created this kind of system that kicks and pieces from all over the place, but it makes sense to me. So our structure module is like always a really popular one, I think, because a lot of people come in going, they just kind of fingers in their ears going, I don't want to know, because it stymies me. But I really think, it definitely has resonated with people, that they've kind of gone, okay,
I've got a question about Ali, the entry level of the people that join your How to Write Love online course. Are these people that have already got a manuscript underway, or they're brand new writers? They're still trying to formulate ideas. I'm guessing you probably have a broad range. Do you specify? And there's a second part to my question. What are you finding that people most are really looking to get out of your course? So they're embarking on romance. What are some of the real key takeaways that you think that they're looking for in your course? So what's the entry level, and what are the things that people are hoping to learn?
So we call it like a foundation romance writing course because it's so broad. We cover everything you need to know about writing a romance novel. So it's a really good baseline. But for all that, we've had people coming in who've like, I've always wanted to write a book and never have. All the way to, we have actually had, which is phenomenal considering we're on course number 3, that we've actually had publishers say to authors who've sent manuscripts to them, how about you go and take this course?
Nice.
And which is wacky. That just completely blew our minds. And we heard that a couple of different quite big romance publishers had done that. It was just madness. But they know us. They know how we speak about the subject. So they know that something that we're offering is going to be something that we've really put a lot of work into. And so, yeah, we've had one author in our first group had sold a book to a publisher, and then she was about to embark on her second. So they said to her, how about you take this course? Because oftentimes, like, you don't have to send something perfect into a publisher. If they see like that kind of that stone, you know, that gem that hasn't been shone, they can help shine. So I know authors who've sent books in who had no idea how to use punctuation, but they can write a ripper. So you'll get those first-time authors who have written something fantastic, but they just might need a bit of polishing. So we've got people coming from all the way from have never written a book before to we've had people who've self-published a number of books and are still doing the course, because that thing of we've sort of spoken about, how you can talk about craft to the end of time and you'll always learn something. So for people who are sort of further along the process, to be able to sit down and go, okay, these are things I might not have looked at it that way, or I might have forgotten that that's what I used to do. There's value in it for all kinds of writers. As to what particular writers are looking for with the course, like there's definitely, I found that each module will have different people come out saying, oh my gosh, that's the thing that I really never got a handle on, or I never thought of it that way. So I think a particular one that's always really that people often struggle with is goal, motivation, and conflict. So when you look at sort of knowing your characters and knowing what their goals are at the beginning and knowing what their motivations are for why they make the choices they make, whether they're the good guy, whether they're the villain, whether they're the hero, the heroine, any kind of character can kind of do anything as long as you know what their motivations are. So the best kind of villains are those that the reason that they make the choices that they make is not to go, wah ha ha ha. They do it because something's happened to them to make them act that way. And so knowing this kind of stuff about your characters, whether they're good guys or bad guys or anything, that knowing their goals, whether they're internal goals, they might not know themselves, and their external goals, knowing their motivation, knowing what happened to them to make them make the choices that they make. And then knowing the conflicts, knowing about the things that stop them from making good choices in their lives, and having them have to face those conflicts are just the absolute grist for the mill. They're the juicy bits of the story that readers will kind of know about the characters before they know about themselves. And that can be really challenging to kind of figure out about your characters in a way that feels fresh and new and believable and sustainable. So that's probably one that's that people definitely can find a lot of value in. That's quite hard. I think every single module that we do will have certain people go, oh, like I struggled with setting, and the way that you've described how to use your 5 senses to really anchor a reader in the scene. They said just changed everything. So the author that I mentioned, who that was her really big take, the one who'd sold a book, she said, I just find myself when I go for a walk, I find myself kind of hearing the crunch of the gravel under my feet and kind of feeling the tickle of wind on the back of my neck. And she said, these are things I never even paid attention to until doing that module, and went, oh my gosh, like all of this flavor and sensory stuff, she said, my eyes have opened to then getting that into the story. So it's very exciting.
That brings me immediately, I was actually going to talk about a different software, but one of my favorite aspects, does the course actually cover what software you use to write? And
no,
and there's a software called Pro Writing Aid that I use, and that actually flags up how many senses you've talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And again, it's
quite nice.
writing aids. Yeah, it can be one of those ones that some people find really valuable and other people find like terror, because it's like they've told that 87% of this and they think they have to be 100%. And
you just have to ignore all of that crap and just go, well, what do I need out of this? What am I going to take out of this? And you pick the bits that you want from it. And when you're using that, it's really good to just be able to pick the bits you want. If you try
100%.
and take every single thing, it will be, everyone will have the same book. It's going, you can't do that. But just out of mild curiosity, what software, seeing as you've got so many books, what software do you use to write?
I use Word. So when Scrivener kind of came out and was like started to become quite popular, I looked into it because it seemed very much like something that would be useful for me. And this was a number of years ago, so I'm sure it's adapted and changed and evolved since then. But I kind of went in and went, it's actually the way Scrivener was set up was how I write myself, and I had created my own template. So I have my own templates for all that I don't plot or anything like that. I have like a template set up for my working file, for my character files, for I have a kind of my story beat kind of file. These are things that I might not use, but they're there for me if I need to kind of, like you said, retroactively go in and kind of go, okay, I need to figure this out. I need to figure this out. My Word files are, anyone would look at them and think that it has been put together by someone with 7,000 voices in their head, because it is practically every single paragraph is color coded. There are pictures, there are the fonts are color coded. I have highlighting color codes that mean different things for me. So as I mentioned in our last chat, instead of researching something, I'll highlight it in yellow. So if I write a sentence or a paragraph and I go, that's no good, but I just want to keep being productive, I highlight it in yellow and I keep on going.
I use square brackets.
See, there you go. We all have our things. And so I highlight in blue if it's conflict. I highlight in for goals in green, for motivation in purple. So it's massively color coded the whole way through, so that I can kind of see in a glimpse the shape of my story, to see that maybe it's been 3 chapters since the conflict's even been referred to and things like that. So these are things that I've developed over time that I could not find, because they're just to me, it's like, and the way that they have the navigation bar with different scenes. So for someone who writes out of order, using the navigation bar with scene titles means that I can literally just dip in and out of scenes at a blink. So
that's what Scrivener does, though. That allows you to just move
but I don't like the color of it. It's too brown.
Well, you can change the colors.
I'm with you,
actually
Ali.
literally change colors on for each of your documents. And
I'm old school.
I spoke with
Jack.
We did a podcast with Bryn and I about software, and we sort of touched on software a bit, and I was horrified, absolutely horrified, to discover that his whole book was one Word file. And I was just like,
that's how I do my. I use one Word file.
Yep,
I use the navigation bar. Yeah.
But I don't know whether it's using a Mac and having Word repeatedly crash on you over numerous times. When it gets to a large document with sort of size, it just keeps crashing, and I don't want that risk, because sometimes it corrupts and then you
totally fair.
So
I find that the version I've
file.
got, it saves every time you do a new keystroke, it saves, and it saves to the cloud as well, so you've got an automatic backup every time you've made
but it also backs up a crash.
Anyway, we're segueing. I do have one final question for you, Ali, in terms of romance writing, and I think, Harry, this might have tied in with one of your questions in terms of romance tropes. If someone was thinking about writing romance, what are the key? If you had to boil it down to, I know we talked about the difference between a love story and a romance, and the different elements of tragedy and overcoming barriers. What are the key tropes or key ingredients that you think need to be in a good romance in terms of to fit into that template?
Sure. So really for it to be a romance, to be classed as a romance, there just needs to be a romantic relationship with a satisfying ending. That's literally that's it. That it has to be. So that's that happy for now kind of thing that you mentioned in the last chat. So that satisfying ending means it's either happy ever after or happy for now. Like, you know that they're going to go off into the sunset and be together for the interim.
At least a couple of days.
Yeah, there you go. So that's it. And within the confines of that, you can really kind of write anything. But then there's that thing, as you sort of mentioned, about writing a sort of a good romance, or writing a romance that a romance reader will go to your book and understand that this is what they came for. There's kind of certain, you've got that first meet, whether it's a meet cute where there's some funny way that the two people get together, or there's certain tropes that are very popular, and those tropes chop and change all the time. So whether it's I think in the last chat you mentioned about the proposal, there's that kind of enemies to lovers, or you can have friends to lovers, or there's so many different tropes that are really popular. And the fascinating thing with tropes is that it's kind of something that we on the inside knew about, whereas readers might know about it because, especially with something like Mills and Boon, they really highlight the tropes on the cover. Even the titles can have the tropes written in them, because they're very much marketing to, this is the kind of, readers are like scanning going, I like this, I like cowboys, I like millionaires, I like sheiks, I like boom boom, they're the ones I'm going to read. So you have to get these people quickly because they know what they like. And so having those tropes on the cover has always been a big thing. But since the last few years of BookTok, the absolute rise of the selling power of these young 20-something women who have suddenly discovered romance for the first time. And I really think that they were given books in school that they didn't like and thought they weren't readers. And then suddenly in their early 20s, they've gone and found these romance novels and gone, what the heck is this? This is amazing. And has absolutely changed the selling landscape of romance around the world. Like you'll have, Colleen Hoover as a romance author who had 7 books in the top 10 of the New York Times for a number of weeks. And some of those books of hers were old and they really got to understand tropes, and they were very much about, this is the kind of trope I love, this is the kind of trope that you love. So tropes are a massive selling tool for romances. There's certain kind of moments that they're not prescriptive. Like you don't have to have these things in a romance novel, but gosh, they can really uplift them, is something that I like to call the guarantee, which is some kind of scene within the craziness, within the kind of, running from the bad guy if it's a romantic suspense, or within all of the kind of dances and parties of a historical romance. If there's some moment or scene within it where you just see the hero and the heroine, or the two leads, being in a space that kind of shows you what things are going to be like after the book closes, and you can see how they're going to interact when no one's around. When you see that, when they have to clean up the dog vomit or wipe the baby's bum at 3 a.m, or when they suddenly in real life, once the book's over, that you kind of go, I can trust that this is going to survive the madness of what they're going through in this exciting book now, that I trust that I feel a guarantee that after the happy ever after, they're going to be okay. That's something that I love to see in a romance novel. And on the flip side of that is something that Claire Connolly calls the Hollywood moment, where if you have that Sound of Music, when they're when Maria and Captain Von Trapp, and they have the sort of the big dance party at the house, and the two of them end up out in the courtyard, and they just do kind of a quiet, silent dance in the moonlight together. I've got, again, goosebumps talking about it. So if you can have a Hollywood moment that's something that is just so magical and special and otherworldly within sort of the landscape of what might be a story of two really normal people, those things can really kind of make it. They're the things that people probably go away thinking, I love that with your Hollywood moment.
And would you say that that's your favorite trope, is that Hollywood moment?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I have favorite tropes. I tend to I challenge myself a little bit. Oftentimes I'll be like, oh, I've never written one of those, or I've never written a royal, or I've never written a heroine who falls pregnant accidentally, or things like that. And I tend to kind of throw myself like spanners that I'm then have to somehow kind of dig my way out of. But when you're 47 books in as well, it's nice to really challenge yourself and go, well, this isn't something that I'd naturally kind of lean towards. So I'm going to have a crack and see if I can write it in a way that makes a beautiful story that I love as well. So,
and where do you get your ideas from? Sorry, you said so you're 47 books in. What inspires your story, and where do you get new ideas? Are you always constantly searching, being an observer of the world, drawing ideas from the world to come up with new concepts?
I think that's really it. I think that the more that you just have that open mind constantly, you just pick up ideas everywhere. So for me, the ideas are the easy part. I have thousands of ideas. It's about kind of deciding which ones are going to all fit together in the one story, or which particular couple I'm going to focus on and live with for the next sort of 3 or 4 months happily. So I don't even know what about it what about something will suddenly make it go this one, whether it's it might be the characters more than anything, that when I start, I might have that little meet cute, that way that they meet, that's all I really know. And then I have to start to think, well, if I'm telling my editor this is what I'm going to write, some authors have to write synopses, some have to write 3 chapters. I literally have to send my editor like a paragraph. And she'll say, yep, that's the story. Very nice. But again, it's like 20 years of working with her. She knows that I can deliver, and she knows that she might say what tropes, or she might say, maybe we've had 17 books set in a winery in the last couple of months. How about you try to set it somewhere else? So there may be a little bit of back and forth.
Good place for a romance.
Yeah, exactly. So hence the fact I'm going to Adelaide this weekend to go check out wineries. So
got to do your research.
Got to do my research. I can't even remember what I was going to do with that now. I got stuck on the wine and
sorry.
started dreaming of wineries outside Adelaide.
I should jump in.
What was the question, Jack? Sorry.
I think you answered it. It was more about what inspires you to come up with new
ideas everywhere. And some people struggle with ideas, but I think again, all writers are really different. But for me, the ideas are the easy part. There's one that I had that was just a favorite of mine that was like a little bit of paper. So this is like back when newspapers used to be able to if you traveled. I was living in Melbourne at the time. There was a newspaper called the MX magazine, like a newspaper that you get every day. They printed a new one, and it was for commuters, and so it would have like ads about this coffee shop on the way, or this restaurant's opening, or this bar's happening this weekend. So it was very much about the commuters on that line. And they had a Lonely Hearts section. So it was like a section that was like, so to the blonde on the Frankston line who was knitting, like I was the guy with the backwards baseball cap, just and so they'd have all these little Lonely Hearts in there of people who are clearly on the same train every day. And so I cut this thing out thinking, God, that's cute. That could be something one day. And it took 10 years for that book to actually happen. And I'd have a million ideas like that have been scrawled down in notebooks and written down and torn out and shoved somewhere. And a lot of them that will just never happen. But that one there, suddenly 10 years later, something happened. I just went, oh, that could be a book about a train boyfriend, this guy who has no idea that he's her train boyfriend. And until one day he does find out. But this idea that we'd been sitting there just finally just had the right couple for it to work.
I think one of the advice that I give people is that, obviously we'd all like to be in your situation of writing 47 books and actually doing that as your career. But unfortunately, the vast majority of authors have another job that they keep doing. So, if it takes you 10, 15, 20 years to get to the position that you're in, by that time, if you write down every single idea you have for a book, you'll then have the time to actually start working on all these ideas. You don't have to come up with an idea. I mean, you're in the situation where you do have to come up with ideas because that's your job. But for most authors, they can spend a lot of time just as long as they write down and keep somewhere a record of ideas. Then when they may get to that point where they either retire or they, can actually quit the day job, they've got a treasure trove of random ideas that have come up over the decades. And then you can just go, okay, I'm going to start working on this one and see how it goes. And
oftentimes it's like those 3 or 4 different ideas that you've had at sort of different
and then
times.
You just amalgamate them.
Those disparate ideas.
This one.
And there's a thing too of like saving ideas. And I think that's one thing that you kind of got to go, well, what are you saving it for? Because I know sometimes you get that urge like, oh, I love that, I'm going to save it for the next book. But then you're like, what if that next book never happens? Like it's about kind of, figuring out like, and you want the book that you're writing at that moment to be as rich and, as deep as it can be. And then, more ideas will come for the next one as well.
Yep. Oh, we've lost you, Jack.
Sorry, no, I had to mute. There was a barking dog in the background, so I muted myself. We do have to pull up stumps. It's been an absolutely intriguing conversation. I've learned so much, Ali, and I knew I would come into this. I came into this with an open mind to say, look, sometimes we can be too much in our own lane and not be open to reading other genres and learning. It certainly piqued my interest, and I may even sign up for your workshop. Oh, can I also ask the question, how do people find your How to Write Love online writing course?
If you go to howtowritelove.com, it'll have all the links. It'll tell you a lot about the course, what the course is about, and it'll have links straight to Teachable. So you'll be able to see when the next course is coming up. So our next one starts around Valentine's Day. But just the harking back for you, Jack. I love when else? But Jack, like what you actually started the conversation with, saying about how you don't write romance, but it's the number of books you'll find that are not romance novels that will have that thread of romance through them.
Yeah.
I think knowing how to do it well, even if it's the most smallest thread, is really important, because it can be a real downfall for books that might be amazing in their genre, but the romance is just like by the by, and it can be really it's a missed opportunity to add and to make sure that thread is as strong as everything else. So like the Da Vinci Code is an example where it was like a ripper read, but for me, the romance side of things was almost like it was just kind of left to the last minute, or it didn't feel like it had any kind of truth to the way the ebbs and flows happen in the romance in that. And so if you're having a thin thread through a completely different genre, still really making sure that the impact of the choices and the ebbs and flows and the conflicts and things in that will just elevate your story immensely. So it's definitely worth knowing how it works.
Right.
Brilliant.
Well, fantastic advice, and thanks so much, Ali. We will pull up stumps now. Thank you so much for giving us your time. We would certainly encourage
Thanks for having me.
anyone who's interested in learning more, check out the How to Write Love online writing course and get into it and start writing. So we'll call it.
I just have to say, it's been brilliant talking to you. Thank you very much for coming.
You too. So nice to meet you.
Thanks. Okay, thanks, Ali. Thanks, Harry. And look forward to catching up in further episodes. And Ali, I'm sure we will cross paths in the writing community again. All the best.
You bet.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
See you, everyone.